What's going on, everybody? I am here with Benita Conde. We just had two great conversations on the podcast. She is the founder of Create Radical Love LLC, which is a life coaching and consulting approach for people who want to radically love their whole life experience, not just compartmentalize parts of it. And you can find more about her at createradicallove.com. That is her website. Benita, what's up?
It's just so good to be here. It's always such a joy, and I feel like we have very lively conversations. So happy to be here.
I think we could talk for like 4 hours.
And then probably like the next day for another 4 hours.
If the calendar permitted. I know we're both,
right.
You're busy and we're both busy, but yeah, I do love our conversations. And it seems like we go from like 0 to 60 pretty quickly.
Yep.
Like we're just chit-chatting about like the day and what we had for breakfast. And then all of a sudden we're talking about highest self and God and the universe and
That's right.
faith. And it's fun.
Yep. Yeah, I don't experience a separation between those subjects
Yeah.
in my life, right? Like it's all one experience. And when I was more in the corporate world, it was very separate actually. And that was part of what was like a disconnect for me, or created a less fulfilling experience. So I'm so grateful to have the opportunity now in pretty much every conversation I have to weave in all of those aspects of self and consciousness, and then how we show up in the world and act from that place. And it's because it's all one thing.
To kind of talk what that just brought up for me as you were saying that, and you're talking about how it's all one thing and not separate. There's something that I talk about sometimes with people that, I don't get super controversial, but there are some things that kind of challenge people. And I think one of the beliefs that I have is that what kind of rubs me the wrong way, or makes me really pause, is when people say that we're just like this soul within this body. So we're really just soul experiencing the world through our body. But I don't believe that to be the case, because that, again, is separation. I believe that, yes, we do have a soul, but we also have a body, and they're both equally important, because if you take the body away from the soul, what are we? We're just a spirit experiencing consciousness and all of those things. But if you take the soul away from the body, what are we? Or take the body away from if you're just a soul, but if you're just a body, then you have no life. You're dead.
Yeah,
so you need both. I think it's not like here's my soul and here's my body. I think we're one, right? We're an integrated being where it's equally as important to treat your body with respect and take care of yourself, while at the same time feeding yourself from a spiritual perspective, so that you get that attention there. But I think we need both of them equally to have this experience that we're having right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the alchemy. It's like that kind of magical, paradoxical alchemy. And from my experience personally, when there have been periods of my life where I have experienced more separation, or more focus on like my individual self and self-will kind of taking the lead, and that's been pretty painful. Like obviously some joyful moments in there too, but just much more anxious, much more fear-based, much more controlling, like self trying to control. And so that sense of separation from the universe, from love, from connection, from energy, from the connectedness of us all, ultimately. Like we all don't have the same experiences by any means, but I can feel the collective energetically, and to recognize that and to be open to that has been so powerful for me, rather than this sense of separation. And then allowing myself to have a relationship with something bigger. I like to call it, or whatever it is, the one infinite creator, right? So there's this creator energy, and having that connection to it is like it's an infinite source of all the things: faith, trust, creativity, manifesting things beyond my wildest dreams. Like if somebody 3 years ago had said to me, in the summer of 2017, like it was this time 3 years ago, and they said 3 months later or 2 months later, you're going to have your own company and you're going to be a coach, a life coach, and it's going to be called Create Radical Love, and you're going to go on this incredible journey and like move from New York City, 8 months after, I would have been like, what? You're out of your mind. So we don't know. Like we don't know. we can't possibly see that in our limited human perspective. And so that's where I feel like all of that is connected.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree. I think it's really limiting when I understand why certain people experience the world from that place of separation, because I did as well. So I see both sides, but I have found it to be way more expansive and way more fun. Like magical is a word I love, because the human in me experiences things when it's really connected to the universe, and it just feels magical. Like, where'd that amazing connection come from? Where is this opportunity? This opportunity feels like it's dropped out of the sky. Now, obviously it hasn't, and there's maybe been some seed planting, and it's come from alignment, but it's a much more joyful experience for sure.
I love human experiences. I mean, like,
Yes,
one of the
me
things
too.
I love the most is to eat. I love great food. And
That's
I can
right.
only experience that through my
Through
physical
the
self.
body.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but that being said, again, the paradoxical nature of everything, which is something that we touched on in our other conversations, I think that makes a place, enhancing that experience to its fullest, makes a place for fasting, the practice of fasting,
Absolutely.
which also enhances our spiritual side.
Yep. Right. So all of it is available.
Mm-hmm.
All of those experiences. And I think that speaks to some other aspects of our conversation too, around conditioning and kind of what happens with the mind. And we can get in very set patterns around things, especially in relation to food and eating, that can be very much just about the body having an experience, and like, just what have we been conditioned to do? And maybe we don't look at it differently until catalyst has been created for us to want to change something. But yeah, looking at it from that spiritual perspective, for lack of a better word, from like, what does my highest self want right now? And we haven't talked about vibratory state, but for me, fasting, I do a fair amount of intermittent fasting.
I do too.
And when I really do, and it happens to me really naturally, like I'll just have days where I don't feel like eating until later in the day. So I just listen to that and I don't push it, right? Like I don't think, oh, well, I usually eat 3 meals a day, so I should eat anyway. Like, no, I'm listening to my intuition saying, no, I don't feel like I need to eat now. It does. It can raise my vibratory state, and I feel much more clean and clear. I feel my body is getting a break. So yeah, all of that is part of the equation then, rather than not being in touch with these infinite experiences that are available.
And I think using the things for what they're intended, because I think everything has a purpose, right?
Yep.
And everything has a nature. And it's important for us to not violate the nature of something. And so, like, that means not using it for our own personal gain, but using it for what its intended purpose is within nature.
That's
So,
beautiful.
Eating has two main purposes. One is sustenance, and the other is it gives us some form of pleasure and satisfaction.
Yep.
Because if we didn't enjoy eating, we wouldn't eat. And if we didn't eat, we would die, right? So it's
Yep.
biological in a sense as well. But we can violate the nature of eating by eating, cheesecake 3 times a day, every day for our meal. That violates the core nature of eating. While it's pleasurable, it's also more than just sustenance.
Yep.
And that violation of that nature leads to what? It leads to obesity. It leads to illness.
Yep.
It leads to, unease. So it leads to a lot of different things, but then that bleeds over into how we view ourselves, our being disciplined, our behaviors, the choices we make in other areas. So I think it's important to look at all these activities. Like, it's perfectly fine to enjoy food. We should. It's there for that reason. That's one of its main functions. But we have to enjoy it within the realm of sustenance and respecting all the different nature of eating. And this is really philosophical too, but it's the same thing with like sex, right?
Yep.
I mean, sex is there for 2 main purposes. Number 1, it's there for procreation. And number 2, it's there for a greater connection between 2 people to create that sexual embrace. So I think that when we start to use it in different manners and violate its very nature, it can lead to a lot of negative or ungodly things, so to speak.
Yeah, well, right? Like anything that shifts out of alignment for who we are, or what our blueprint is, or what we're here to do, and where we maybe have either been aligned with our intuition in the past, but have stepped away from that and have, sort of lost our connection, Or if we're really aligned and are in the flow and in connection with our intuition, our sense of self, that's where I find I work most with people on this, where it's about self-care, the various different aspects of life experiencing, whether it's through food or physical activity or relationship, right? Because any of those areas we can abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Any of those areas can be out of alignment, and we're using them to fill that God-sized hole, for lack of a better phrase, but like that sense of self hole.
Mm-hmm.
That is filled from a sense of connection, but also a sense of being true to ourselves. So if that's out of alignment, then we can use any of those activities, substances,
Yeah.
relationship to the world to fill that. And that's where it gets out of alignment. But coming back to intuition, to just say, like, purely today, what do I need? What, not from like a pleasure only place, but like, what does my whole system need in alignment? Oh, I only need to drink a cup of tea right now. I don't need something more. It's been a fascinating exploration for myself and others to look at it just purely from intuition.
Mm-hmm. And I think we all do that. I mean, I've done that in the past where I've done things to try to figure. You talk about the God-sized hole. I think we're all born with that hole, and it's
Yes.
there. And the only thing that can really fill it in a lasting way is that connection with God, that love from God, and that hole. But we try to fill it with different things, and it's a process that I think we all go through. I mean, we try to, with status or with business or with relationships or with food or with sex or with money or with cars or whatever it may be.
All
We
of it.
think this
Yep.
is, once I achieve this, once I have this, then that hole is going to be full. And we achieve it and it is full for like a day or two. And then it's
It really,
like,
I would
it's
take it
back.
down to like 5 minutes, Mario. I think
Yeah.
it's like 5 minutes of a sense of like relief and like fulfillment. Like you feel
Yep.
full for a minute and like sated, or like, oh yeah, I've got that thing I wanted. And then literally like 5 minutes later, you're like, oh, but either I need it again, or what if it
What's
goes
next?
away, or what's next? And the mind
Mm-hmm.
immediately goes to that because it's not true fulfillment.
Yep. But when you fill it with that love, then that really does fill it. And
That's sustaining.
it sustains
So
it.
different.
And you can still enjoy the other stuff. That's the thing. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be an either or game. It can be an and game. And
All.
so
Yep.
as long as you fill that hole with what it's meant to be filled with, which is love and, connection with God or creator or universe, or whatever label you want to give it,
Yep.
once that is full, you have this sense of worth, right? You have this sense of self, and you are like, you don't need anything else because you are complete. And when you show up and operate from that place of being complete, then not only does it give other people permission to do the same,
That's right.
but it allows you to show up into a situation for the sake of the other. And to me, that's what love is. When someone asks me, like, how do you define love? It's willing the good of the other for the other's sake. It has
Yes.
nothing to
I
do with
want for
me.
you what you
Right.
want for you.
And that's what
Yep.
God's love is for us, because God doesn't need us. God loves us and desires us and wants us, but he doesn't need us. So he wills our good for our own good. And so
Yep.
that's what true love is. And radical love, I love the way you call it, radical love. That's what it is to
Yeah.
me. And when we can take that love and fill that hole and then share that with other people and will their good for their own good, when you bring sales to that or business to that or prospecting to that or whatever it may be, relationship, whatever
That's
it may
right.
be, it becomes its truest nature, its truest form, and it becomes a beautiful thing. Not manipulation, not coercion. Right. It becomes, I want what's best for you because I want what's best for you because I love you. Here's how I can help you. And then you don't take offense to it if they're not ready.
No, like I was just going to say, it's so funny. The next step in that progression is complete letting go of outcomes, which is giving the whole situation back to God. Right? So like, I'm excited, I'm engaged, I'm of service, I show up in some situation, we have a conversation about whatever it is. And if for whatever reason that person on the other side, that being is like, no, for whatever reason, that's not for me, or you just never hear back or whatever, I don't even think about that stuff anymore. Like there's no stickiness, it's not the original intention of the interaction, to your point. And so there's just this lightness and this freeness. There can be moments where there might be a preference. And so there's like, oh, I was really hoping that had happened. That was my preference. But it's so light. It's like, oh, but it's not. Okay, on to the next. And that is this constant experience of giving whatever happens, whatever the outcomes are, back to the creator.
Right. And you don't need that to justify yourself.
Well, because it's not
right?
the external circumstances and the external feedback and the external reactions, whatever it might be, money, positive feedback, reinforcement, that's not filling the hole anymore.
Mm-hmm.
To go back to,
Yep.
that part of the conversation, like, oh, I don't get the hole filled from that external
Mm-hmm.
circumstantial stuff that's always fleeting, that's not real. I get it from this other connection to source,
Mm-hmm.
light, love, infinite creator. Oh, so it doesn't have that hold. It doesn't have that meaning attached to it.
Absolutely. Well, Benita, thank you so much. This has been another great conversation. I love talking about this stuff. I want to remind people that they can find you at createradical.love.com. That's your website, and to connect with you across social if anything that we talked about resonates with them. But I love these deep conversations. I love that you're willing to go there, and it's just so
Absolutely.
much
Always.
fun. Thank you. Let's do it again soon.
Thanks, Mario. Absolutely.